Come on in. Welcome to Idled Out, where we talk all things Survivor. My name is Luke, and today we're talking about big Survivor moves which never actually happened. You know, I was thinking this week for no reason at all, about how important timing is in Survivor. If you make a move too early, you put a target on your back. If you wait too long to make a move, playing it safe and letting opportunity slip you by, well, welcome to the video. Survivor is about playing to win, not just playing to not lose. So today, I thought I'd focus on 5 big Survivor moves which were dangled over our heads, moves which were constantly teased but never came. These players acting as some sort of cruel Survivor dominatrix. Yes, today we're reliving the hand-sittingest, blue-ballinest non-moves in Survivor history, from early Survivor frustrations all the way through to the new era. So get cozy as we talk about 5 survivors who just said no to making a move. At number 5 is Albert constantly teasing a flip in Survivor South Pacific. Albert and Sophie were a very unique duo in that Albert was one of the most overeager players of all time, a guy constantly chomping at the bit to make a big move for big move's sake, and Sophie was perhaps the single most patient player in Survivor history. A woman who endured Coach's egomania, Albert's smug overplaying, Brandon's insanity, Rick's marble-mouthed speech, Edna's absurd fashion choices, and a whole-ass Christian cult as an agnostic herself just to win $1 million. I genuinely don't think I could do it. In the post-merge of South Pacific, after Upolu had a leg up on Savai and were content to just pick them off, Albert constantly wanted to change up the plan at the last minute, for no real reason other than he was in such a safe position that he was bored. Initially, this meant shuffling around the targets, then getting reined in by Coach and Sophie. But it later morphed into wanting to pick off stragglers like Edna in his own alliance to curry favor with the Savai jurors. Unfortunately, Albert ended up doing the worst possible thing you could do in this situation, which was tease a flip, get talked down by Sophie, and then not flip at all, sending everyone out the door angry with him for essentially giving them false hope. The favor was not curried with Savai. In this era of Survivor, the late teens to mid-20s, there was an epidemic of these sort of smooth-talking players who had good reads but were constantly in sales mode and were willing to tell people what they wanted to hear, even if they never intended to follow through. Your Sashes, your Mix, and your Alberts. But when it comes to Survivor gameplay, Albert was the most all-sizzle, no-steak of them all. And that's saying something when we're comparing him to a guy whose picture is next to the word feckless in the dictionary.
Feckless.
Feckless.
At number 4 is Sandra failing to convince the heroes to vote off Russell in Survivor Heroes vs. Villains. Hey, who said all of these are bad? Sandra's repeated attempts and failures to take out Russell ultimately won her the game, as her anti-Russell crusade became her brand at Final Tribal with a jury who deplored him. They can't say she didn't warn him. At the merge of Heroes vs. Villains, Sandra beelined to her old pal Rupert and spilled the fish to him about how hard the heroes were getting misted by Russell. There was no woman's alliance. Russell didn't idle out Courtney, he wasn't on the bottom, he was the ringleader of the villains. And by the way, the brain trust at the heroes camp basically gifted the enemy an idol, sealed with a kiss. In a rare moment of strategic lucidity, Rupert believed Sandra, but the rest of the heroes didn't. So Sandra was forced back into working with Russell against her will due to JT's own stubborn insistence on nuking his game from orbit. The next round, Sandra again tried to defect, but this time Candace heroically tattled on her to Russell, again forcing Sandra's hand and pushing her back into Russell's stubby arms. As the hero's tribe quickly diminished, Sandra had no choice but to embrace the dark side and roll with Russell to the end of the game. But along the way, she noticed that the heroes were leaving frustrated and angry at Russell, and Parvati and Danielle by association. So she turned what could be perceived as a weakness, her inability to get out her primary target, into a strength, riding the anti-Russell train all the way to $1 million, and burning a fedora or two along the way. At number 3 is the failed blindside on Tom because Karen sucks in Survivor Palau. A few failed coups were mounted against Tom, but the one most likely to succeed was Stephanie and Katie's. Katie had an endgame plan with Tom and Ian, her day one allies, two guys she knew she was very much drawing dead against. Enter Stephanie, the last remaining member of Oolong, who was given second life in the game after Janu fell on the sword at the prior tribal council to save her. Together, these two realize that they have the numbers to shift the power away from Tom, Ian, and Greg, and into the hands of the four women left in the game, themselves, Jen, and Karen. This episode is absolutely ridiculous. There's so much conspiring. The blindside on Tom seems like such a layup, and Tom is actually vulnerable at this tribal council after Ian wins immunity, one of literally only 4 times he was vulnerable to be eliminated from the game this season. This is their only chance. The numbers are right there. There's no idols or advantages to save Tom, and everyone agrees he is by far the biggest jury threat. Then Karen. Here's a little Survivor tip. When you tell someone you have a plan and they look at you like this, your plan ain't happening. After Karen hears about this plot, she marches right over to Tom and lays it all out. The women are coming for you, and your ally Katie is in on it. You could not make a bigger case of a survivor living up to their name more than Karen does right here. You'd have to put Frosty in a freezer or throw Leaf into a tree to get a survivor player to be more on brand with their name. She literally goes and speaks to the tribe manager. Even Tom in confessional is like, I don't know why she told me that. I wouldn't have told me that. Of course, the plot fails and Stephanie is voted out. As for Katie, she puts the situation more succinctly than I ever could.
We can't get a female alliance together because Karen sucks.
Amen. At number 2 is Mitch sleepwalking through the endgame of Survivor 48. Mitch is probably the new era poster boy for playing to get far, but not playing to win. He had so many chances to change his fortune in the game, where he was stuck on the outside of a big alliance, but a dependable enough vote to get clued in occasionally by them. But he acted with basically zero agency up until his inevitable Final 5 boot. By the mid-merge of 48, it was abundantly clear that there was a big alliance, and Mitch wasn't in it. At multiple times, the bottom feeders of the tribe entertained the idea of flipping the votes and taking a long overdue shot at Joe and Eva. But because of the razor-thin margins on all these votes, Mitch's vote was needed, and he got cold feet every single time and always ran back to Joe. The final 8 vote is one of the most frustrating Survivor episodes ever. The other 3 players on the bottom, Star, Mary, and Camilla, are all willing to split the vote and go to rocks. And Mitch still backs out.
Well, Mitch, are you willing to go to rocks?
Oh, and this is the chicken and waffles dance episode too? Oh, fuck, man. I guess there's a little nuance here. Mitch was understandably frustrated that Star and Mary voted for him at the last tribal council, but when you're on the bottom, when you've failed to make it far with meaningful connections, when you've given up all your allies, you simply don't have the luxury of trust. You don't have the luxury of safe and easy votes. And Star and Mary are on the bottom with Mitch anyway. Who did he expect them to vote for? Fucking Batman? Overall, Mitch's failure to do anything is a big part of why 48 is such a snoozer post-merge. It felt like a move was teased forever, episode after episode after episode, and it was the biggest case of Survivor blue balls since this next one. At number 1, the most frustrating non-move in Survivor history is Laurel failing to make a move against Dom and Wendell in Survivor Ghost Island. Almost every post-merge episode of Ghost Island is the same thing. Someone pitches a move on Dom and Wendell to Laurel, then they pull some social magic trick like taking her on a reward to bring her back into the fold. Down the stretch, they don't even have to do anything. She just talks herself out of it. It is mind-boggling. Laurel was skittish for a few reasons. 1, she's a naturally conservative player, which isn't necessarily bad. So is Sophie, for example. 2, her original tribe was almost completely wiped out, so she didn't have a lot of connections at the merge. And 3, Wendell and Dom worked her hard. They brought her in, gave her a home when she didn't have one, trusted her and shared information with her when no one else except Donathan would. They brought her on rewards and genuinely made her a real member of their alliance. That's just great social gameplay from these two, but eventually Laurel needed to break away from them if she wanted to have a shot to win, which she apparently did not. I get that flipping on Dom and Wendell when Desiree pitched it at Final 11 was maybe a bit too early, but I don't know, what about at the Final 8, when a Wendell blindside is on the table and he doesn't see it coming? Alright, what about Final 7, when Donathan and Kellen are chomping at the bit to make a move, and Laurel has immunity, so there's literally no chance it could blow back on her? That seems like a good time. Maybe Final 6, when they're taking her for granted, and they've even burned her by not taking her on a reward. Still a no, huh? Laurel said she believed that Wendell and Dom would split the final tribal vote, allowing her to squeak out a win instead. But for that to happen, it would require a sizable contingent of jurors who would want to vote for her, which there isn't. It's so frustratingly nonsensical that I simply refuse to believe she truly thought this would happen. Granted, I guess the first half of her prediction was correct. Dom and Wendell literally did split the votes 5-5. But Laurel was all but ignored by the jury at Final Tribal, and she became the only finalist in Survivor history to get demoted to juror to cast the tie-breaking vote. Oh, so that was her big move. Moving from a seat at Final Tribal to the jury bench. Got nothing else for ya. Don't suck like Karen. Like and subscribe and I'll get you more Survivor content just like this. Until next time, don't get idled out.